A rusted hook hangs in the dim silence of a forgotten chamber, and for a moment you can almost hear the echo of the last royal who dared to stand beneath it. It is strange how a simple piece of curved iron barely longer than a forearm could carry the weight of entire kingdoms. But in the old courts, where rulers smiled with powdered faces and whispered with perfumed breath, the most terrifying things were never the loudest. They were the quiet tools, the subtle punishments, the elegant horrors carefully designed to keep nobles obedient and peasants trembling. And the executioner's hook, well, that one had a reputation for doing its work without raising its voice. Imagine a palace so polished that even the marble floors seemed to judge you, a place where every tapestry hid a rumor and every servant pretended not to see what they absolutely saw. In this world of velvet etiquette, an executioner was not some brutish figure from a village tale. He was a professional, well-fed, well-paid, and disturbingly calm. And his prized instrument wasn't a ceremonial sword or some grand device meant to impress diplomats. No, he relied on a simple hook, sharpened just enough to remind you that even iron has intentions. When the king wanted someone humbled rather than gone, the hook was summoned. It was designed not to end a life, but to bend one, reshaping reputations the way a blacksmith shapes metal slowly, deliberately, and with a touch of theatrical cruelty. Stories whispered through royal halls claimed the hook was invented by a queen whose smile could freeze a banquet mid-toast. She allegedly wanted a punishment that left no dramatic marks, no scandalous spectacle, something discreet enough for palace walls, yet unforgettable enough to stay in a person's memory forever. So she commissioned a tool that could lift the spirit, as she sarcastically phrased it. The court applauded her poetic brilliance, though everyone knew her metaphors were as venomous as her compliments. And so the hook became the palace's quiet reminder that status, like silk, could unravel with one careful tug. Some say the first person to face the hook was a nobleman who made the unfortunate mistake of flirting with someone far above his rank. Not officially wrong, but royally inconvenient. During a midnight feast thick with incense and political tension, he allegedly slipped the queen a compliment that traveled far beyond the boundaries of good judgment. The next morning he was summoned to a chamber so pristine it almost felt holy, except for that one iron hook hanging from the ceiling like a question waiting for an answer. The executioner didn't speak. He didn't need to. His job was to let the nobleman's imagination do most of the work. Rumor has it the nobleman walked out on his own 2 feet, perfectly unharmed on the outside, but with a dramatically different understanding of his place in the world. He never dared look the queen in the eyes again, mostly because he could never quite forget the sensation of being held up by something colder than any crown. Of course, historians argue over how often the hook was truly used. Some claim it was more bark than bite, a psychological tool rather than a physical one, reserved for nobles who needed a sharp reminder that ambition had limits. Others insist it played a quiet role in shaping royal families themselves. There was once a prince, arrogant, beautiful, convinced he was immortal because poets said he was, who mocked the executioner publicly. The king, embarrassed beyond measure, invited his son to a private lesson in humility. The prince emerged hours later, pale, trembling, and suddenly charitable to every servant he met. He donated half his wardrobe to the poor within a week. Some called it enlightenment. Others whispered that the hook had gently guided him toward better behavior. But royal punishments were never just about discipline. They were about power, artful, theatrical, and designed to linger in the mind long after the moment passed. Palace officials perfected the hook's mythology, telling newcomers that it sensed arrogance, that it preferred sinners with pride, that it had a talent for finding the exact point where fear turns into obedience. None of this was true, of course. The hook was just metal. The real fear came from the humans wielding it, humans who understood that control didn't require brutality. It required performance. And nothing performed quite like a silent, suspended piece of iron, Yet, even tools like this gathered their own legends. Some believed the hook carried a curse. Anyone who touched it with bare hands would dream of falling endlessly, as though their mind kept replaying the moment it was lifted. Others said the hook never truly rested, that it swayed ever so slightly, even when the room was still. The palace servants refused to clean it at night. The executioner claimed it didn't need polishing, that certain memories take care of the shine. By the time the hook was finally retired, locked away in a forgotten storeroom, behind crates of old banners, its shadow had already become larger than any king who wielded its power. That's the thing about royal secrets. They rarely die. They just change rooms. And even now, if someone discovers the hook and dares to lift it from its dusty corner, they might feel a faint tremor in the metal, as if its long memory is waking up. And that's how one royal's obsession with control turned a simple tool into a legend whispered across centuries. Or maybe into a silent curse that still waits in the darkest corner of a forgotten palace corridor. If you think this was twisted, wait till you hear what the next royal did to keep his throne. Subscribe and step deeper into history's darkest corners.